wanted to take a few minutes and go over some considerations for engine replacement on these 318s. So originally, the John Deere 318 came with either the B43G engine, 43 cubic inches, 18 horsepower, and then 1986 it was upgraded to the P218, 48 cubic inches and still 18 horsepower. Most of those changes were due to changes in the rods, the carburetor, both the venturi of the carburetor and the main jet of the carburetor, and then the camshaft. So overall architecture of the engine was very similar. There are a couple of differences in those two engines that make it really important when you're considering a repower. Now, places like Small Engine Warehouse, which I have never done business with them, so this is neither an advertisement nor a promotion or a complaint or anything. Places like Small Engine Warehouse sell kits for these tractors, much like this one. Now, I am 95% sure this was a kit from Small Engine Warehouse, because when I bought this machine, there was actually a brand new 23 horsepower Vanguard sitting right next to it, and another 318 that had not even been installed yet. So it was from the Small Engine Warehouse. Right now, the 23 horsepower engines, as set up for either the B or the P series, are running like $17.75 plus shipping, I believe. So don't quote me on the price. Prices obviously change. But there are a couple of differences in these machines that I think need to be taken into account when you're considering doing a repower. A lot of times, what folks will do is they will go and they'll look at Harbor Freight or Northern Tool, and they will look at the Predator, the Chinese knockoff engines, which is fine. You know, if that floats your boat, I'm not here to judge one way or another the engine that you buy. I'm just trying to help kind of gauge some of the issues that you might have should you choose to go that route versus buying an engine package. One of the key things is the PTO. The replacement engines, pretty much all of them have the 1-inch PTO shaft. So the original 1 7/16 crankshaft that is on, I believe it's 1 7/16, that is on the Onans will not work on the new engines, both the knockoffs and the Vanguards or the Hondas, whatever. So that's something to take into account, that you're going to have to do something with the PTO. Next thing you're going to have to decide is overall length of the engine. Now, the B series was a longer engine than the P series. Most of that had to do with the way the flywheel was designed. And if you look at the housing for the B series, the flywheel housing actually protrudes slightly. So to show you these differences, I have a B series drive shaft and a P series drive shaft. So if you look, and I'm just going to roughly line these two ends up right here, so that's equal. But you see how the P series drive shaft, this one right here, the rusted one, is longer than the B series, about an inch and a half, 2 inches. I can't remember the exact difference in length. So that's the big thing that you have to consider when you're going to buy these replacement engines. You have to figure out how you're going to hook up the drive shaft. Now, what Small Engine Warehouse does, and maybe some other providers on the internet, what they do is they actually have this bushing right here, or this adapter, which I'm assuming is just bolted to the flywheel, and this adapter sets the length of the engine. At the same time, they have these plates that they add that will adjust the engine depth in the, so basically these are the original mounts right here. Those go in the original mounting holes. These holes right here. And then the plate is just two metal bars, and then that plate mounts to the engine. So you can change where the engine mounts based on where you mount the engine on those plates right there. And I believe if you're going to put if this was going to be for a P series, you just move it farther forward on those metal bars. You basically just move it a little bit farther forward to account for the longer drive shaft. Now, the big problem there is you might be off center on your PTO. So your PTO needs to be on center so it drives. So you don't want the PTO belt cocked at an angle forward or backwards. So that's another concern that you need to pay attention to. And then the last one is the electrical system. And the original B series, and this was, I think, up through 84. I can't remember. There's some serial number breaks in there mid-year. But they started installing the solenoid shift style starter instead of the Bendix starter. Now, what I mean by that is if you'll look in this 1983 frame, there is no cutout right here for the solenoid on the starter. And if we go over here and look at this 1988 318, and I don't know how well you can see it, but if you look in there, there's a hole cut out for the starter or the solenoid on the starter. And we can go over here and look at this one, this 1983 or 1990 318. And you can see that hole right there. Now what that hole is for, like I said, it's for the solenoid. The solenoid on the starter is much like the solenoid on the earlier units that was attached on the dash cluster, the dash tower, which is right here. So that was the solenoid that's on the earlier B Series 318s. Now there were some B Series 318s that I have seen. I believe it was somewhere in 1985 that ended up with the solenoid shift style starter where they started cutting holes in the frame. Now there's some starter mounting differences in there that we can get into, but that's pretty complicated overall because there's lots of little nuances from about early 1985 all the way up to 1987. There's lots of little differences when they switched over the engines and how they did it. And it was kind of almost incremental to start with little electrical system changes, so on and so forth. So when you go to make that engine right there work in either a B or a P series, you have to pay attention to what type of starter system it is. So for instance, if I'm going to take that engine right there that was designed for a P series replacement, or a B series replacement, excuse me, and I'm going to put it in the P series frame, I need to make sure that I take that solenoid along with that engine because that tractor there does not have a solenoid on it. Now that requires a little bit of rewiring, and so that's something to consider in terms of wiring. But there's lots of little differences that you have to consider when you're going to repower one of these 318s, and the drive shaft, the PTO, and the electrical connections are going to be the big ones that you really need to account for before you put a replacement engine in. Last thing you want to do is order this engine and it doesn't fit right, or you have to do some major modifications to the frame. One of the big things, and if you go back and look at my videos a couple weeks ago, I recently picked up a 317 with a B43G engine in it. Now, a B43 was never used as a replacement engine for the 317. Only the P series was ever used as a replacement engine for the 317. And that means that the B series, there was never a kit to put the B series in the 317. Well, that means that the frame had to be substantially modified by the previous owner, and they actually ended up cutting out the sides of the frame and so on and so forth, that 317, which made the frame significantly weaker, which I think one day will be its downfall. But just a couple things to consider when you are looking at these engines and you're trying to decide. Sometimes instead of trying to piecemeal one together, it might be better just to get a kit from somewhere online or a store or something like that, and the kit is specifically designed for the tractor, because there are lots of little differences that, we're not just going to drop one in. So just wanted to let everybody know about that. There are a couple things that I need to do related to getting this Vanguard in that 318 over there. So I've got to figure out, I think what I can do is I'm going to use, I think I can use this drive shaft. I've looked at all of the U-joints and they're okay. I think it was another tractor that I was concerned about the U-joints on. So I can use that drive shaft, and that's my first problem solved right there. And then after that, it's just down to electrical work. So I will work on the electrical work. I'll probably go ahead and get it installed in the tractor, and then I'll work on the electrical work. But first, I got to finish tearing down this one. You can see I made pretty good progress on it from the previous video. Tonight, my goal is to get a lot of the hydraulics out, got the hydraulics draining and everything. Once I get the hydraulics out, then I'll take the, and in the process of getting the hydraulics out, I'll go ahead and remove the electrical system. The wiring harness is pretty much shot. I mean, it's all kind of hacks together. So I'll save what I can there for a rainy day, and then leave the rest alone, throw it in the trash. And then I can pull the tires off, and then I'll probably pull the transaxle out and then send it on its merry way to the scrap heap. So if you got any questions, comments, I'm happy to answer them. I'm not an expert on repowers. I am not shaking the camera. I do not know why the camera is shaking like that. That's weird. Huh. I am sorry for the shaky video. The camera, I think there's something wrong with this GoPro, which is very sad. It's not that old. I might need to get another camera. So, where was I saying? Oh, I'm not an expert on these repowers. In fact, this is the first repower I've ever had, but I do have enough, I think I have enough experience with the Onans to kind of tell you some of the nuances between the machines themselves. So, thanks for watching.